Hello everybody. So a few weeks ago I went to a bookstore just because I haven't been to a bookstore in quite a while. I've been reading ebooks mostly, and I figured maybe my focus is gonna improve if I opted for a physical book. Because no matter how much book I read in the digital format, I will always be feeling like I'm reading an article. And the memory of that book would not stick with me as much as it would with a physical book. And also the feeling of progress is not gonna be as tangible because you're not able to hold the book in your hand and feel the volume and engage all of your senses with it. So the psychological reward of that reading is not going to be as outstanding as it would be with a physical book. And at the end, when you're finished with the book, if it's an ebook, it would feel like it's evaporating into thin air. But with a physical form of a book, you would put it on the completed shelf, and that would feel like you're adding onto your treasures or you're upgrading your level. It would turn into a game of finishing the book and adding onto the completed collection of yours so that you can fill up that shelf and move on to the next shelf, and that would make the whole process of reading so much more interesting. And no matter how minimal your tech device is, there's always a degree of distraction associated with it, which hinders your capacity to focus single-mindedly on the book and forget about your external reality. There is also an aesthetic facet to a physical book that you cannot find with a digital format, because when you bring a book with yourself to the nature and read it while the sun is out, the reflection of sunlight on the pages creates this effect that increases alertness and enhances your focus so that you're able to absorb information faster and with greater ease. Another benefit of reading a physical book is that it slows you down and dampens the stimulation of your brain so that you can engage deeper with the text and you can proceed with patience and thoughtfulness. And you know that patience and deep focus is the foundation of intellectual growth. So knowing that the benefits of a physical book far outweighs the convenience of an ebook, I went straight into that bookstore and I picked up a few good books, and I came back home and I started reading them, and I figured that I am getting this passionate fuzzy feeling around reading them that I've not been feeling with reading ebooks, which was so freaking awesome, because all of a sudden an entirely new world of understanding opens up to you just because you're holding a physical book. And another immense difference that I experienced in this transition was that I found myself taking much more notes, and I was constructing intellectual conversations with the author by constantly writing my thoughts and insights down beside every passage, to a point that I was individualizing the entirety of that book and I was making my mark on it as if I was leaving an intellectual signature on that book so that it would feel like a project, like I was actually building something. Instead of just passively reading the passages, I was adding onto it and I was holding a conversation along with the author. And instead of it being just merely an observation, it would become a massive experience in which you're developing your own intellectual capacity and you're adding onto your thinking tools. And at the same time, you're practicing your writing, which is the same as organizing your thoughts. Every single time that you try to write something, you're attempting at organizing and ordering your thoughts and putting them into a very distinct form so that it could be understood and it could be broadened and expanded into other forms of thoughts. And that's going to activate your thinking and help you expand your worldview and gain new perspectives. So to sum it all up, we can say that the physical form is much more thought-inducing than the digital form. That's why I've been trying to sever ties with technology and go all into the analog world. Because with technology, even if it's convenient for you and offers so many options that you can choose from, it's still carrying a little bit of distraction, which is going to make it so hard for you to go deep, because it's impossible to be deeply focused on anything when there's even a smidgen of distraction. Just imagine sitting on the bench with a book and a pencil with you and nothing else. Even by merely imagining it, you can visually feel how your cognitive load is going to be so much lighter, much more capable of holding on to information and gaining insights and adding onto your knowledge just because you have zero distractions. And all of this is not to say that I'm not going to be using any ebooks after this, because I know that ebooks are super convenient and you can carry an entire library just in your e-reader device. What I'm saying here is that you have to switch to physical books once in a while, because the amount of benefit you're gonna get is immense, and you're probably gonna carry that effect onto reading ebooks as well, and actually feel like you're reading a book, not an article. Because if you lose the sight of the fact that you're holding a real book in your hand and there's volume to it, then you're probably gonna treat it like a blog post, and you're gonna skim through it without interacting with the text in a deeper level and also gaining insight out of it. But there's also going to be some disadvantages when it comes to physical books, because if I were to talk about my own experience, when I go to a bookstore and I want to buy a physical book, I have to make sure that that book is worth reading. It's either classics or I've read a ton of reviews on it. I am sure that that book is going to be worth my time, or it's going to be worth a space on the shelf. And unless I am entirely sure about it, I'm not going to be buying it. So there's this degree of difficulty that you're gonna find when you're buying a physical book, which is absent with ebooks. With ebooks, you can try out so many books, even if you've just heard of it. It's not that difficult because it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't cost a space on your bookshelves. It doesn't have to stay if you don't like it. It can just be deleted, but with physical books, that's just impossible. You have to either give away the book, which is difficult, or you have to just hide it away somewhere, or you have to burn it. I don't know. You have to do something with it, because I mean, if I were to talk about myself personally, I don't like extra stuff on my shelves. You know, I don't like books that I don't care about. I would love to keep my shelves very inspiring and very motivating, so that every single time I look at it, I really want to grab some and even reread the books that I've read, because they're that good. The last advantage of a physical book is that you can curate a very inspiring mini library for yourself in your room, so that every single time you enter the room, you glance at the side of the books, and that visual makes you much more inspired and gives you the reminder that you need to read, and that's like the visual reminder that you're providing for yourself. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that I can talk to you next time.